Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for coming along. Apologies, I'm not great at standing up in front of large groups of people, but I'll do my best. Setting up a Feva. So,
I know why, sorry.
Okay. I'm just going to I'm going to take the main cell down to start with. Okay, folks, so to start this, don't really need the main cell. This is about setting up the mast and getting the mast rake correct. So a lot of you will have seen a tuning guide that involves measuring from the main halyard down to the transom. So that seems to be the recognised way of checking a mast rake. So attach a tape measure to the end of the halyard. The PA seems to have gone. Can everybody still hear me? Okay, brilliant. So attach a tape measure to the end of the halyard and set it up. And there appears to be a magic number. So we set the tape measure to the top of the gooseneck collar. And then we measure back to the transom. Okay. So this is with the jib up, rig tension on, and with a tension gauge approximately 10 on the tension gauge. About there. And then swinging the tape measure out, the measurement down to the top of the rudder pin tool is 118 centimetres. That 118 happens to be a phone telephone service in the UK. 118, 118. Easy number to remember if you're in the UK. So I think that's where it came from. So that's a great starting point. However, it does have its flaws. So being a plastic rotor molded boat, it is what it is, but they're not all identical. So that measurement gives you a different setup on different boats. So what I devised is an alternative way of doing this. So you're then setting up your mast to suit your boat, your sail, and your crew weight. And it all revolves around the mast and how hard it's pressing against the front of the deck. So you've got two fixed points on the boat, where the mast touches the bottom of the boat and where it touches the deck. Okay? And if we take that away, and our tape measure, because we don't need those anymore, because we're not going to use those for this method of setup. I'll just leave that there. So, what happens is that when you pull on tension, the mast presses against the front of the mast gate here, the deck. Okay, and when you go back out and look at your boats, you'll probably see that your mast is bending forward in the middle. Now, when your mast bends forward in the middle, so it bends forward at the top, it's back in the middle, and that makes the mainsail quite full. Okay, so that's a good setup if you're heavy, or it's medium winds, you're just about hiking. But what happens when the wind gets stronger if you leave your boat like that? You'll get overpowered. You'll pull on the kicking strap, you'll pull on the downhaul, you'll pull on the outhaul, all of which will help flatten the sail. But for most of you, that's not enough. You actually need to help the mast bend. So my method of setup is to ease the halyard back until the mast, if you press again on the collar without the boom on the gooseneck, the mast will just move away from the deck. Somebody here is nodding. Okay, so now if you look up the mast, you'll be able to see that it's now straight and not bending forward at the top. And so now the mast is straight, the sail is slightly flatter. And you can take this further back as it gets windier. Okay, so you can actually go all the way back. So, without the rope in there. So it's actually, you can set it up so it's actually touching the back of the gate when you start. And that will then allow the mast to bend, to come forward at the deck, forward in the middle, and the mast will actually be bent slightly, which makes the sails flatter. So by adjusting the rake in this way, you can have a powerful sail with the mast pressed against the front, or a bent mast and a flatter, less powerful sail with it against the back. Still doing all the things with the control, with the kicker, the outhaul and the downhaul that you would normally do. But certainly for lighter crews, this will help. Now, this is where the measurement doesn't work. The boat, because it's a plastic boat, they're all slightly different. So you have to set up each one individually to your boat. And using this method of how hard the mast is pressing against the front of the gate is that I've found the best way to do it. Now, there's one more part to this, and that is you're going, well, okay, so you've just let tension off the jib halyard. Now the shrouds are really slack. Okay, so in the past, a lot of us will have, in dinghies especially, will have set the mast rake up by first of all setting the shrouds, then pulling on the tension with the gauge, and then measuring and getting the mast rake right with a measurement to the transom. However, I'd like you to think of it in a different way. So if you look at a boat side on, I'm not sure that I can move it. I can. We've got two triangles here, one with the mast being the middle point, one triangle down to the forestay, and then a second triangle from the shroud plates down to the mast. Now, you can see that the jib triangle has got a wider base than the shroud triangle. So this one's a more powerful, this is the more powerful triangle of the two. I hope this sentence is making sense. Okay. So if you pull on the jib halyard, okay, it's moving the top of the mast forward. Okay. But it's also increased the rig tension. Okay, so you've now got the tension you want, and really you need, in a Feva, you need enough tension to stop the jib moving too much. You're never going to stop it moving You're always going to have a slack leeward shroud when you're sailing upwind, but you don't want the jib waving around in the breeze and looking like a spinnaker. So you need a certain amount of tension, but putting that tension on by pulling on the jib halyard will just pull the mast forward and press the mast back against the front of the gate and put power back into the sail. So all I'd like you to do is in future when you set your boat up, think of this triangle as the one that affects the mast rake and the shrouds that affect the tension. Now it's not my boat, it's somebody racing this week, and they've obviously taped all their shroud plates up, so I won't alter them. But I would set up and calibrate my mast rake and my position at deck level from a point on the mast with the jib halyard, and then I would play around with the shrouds to get the tension I wanted to stop the jib moving around too much. Okay? So that was it really. It was an explanation of how to set your rig up, and just maybe an alternative way of thinking about how you set up your mast rake. Now, so I can see a lot of people looking. Does anybody have any questions on that? Anybody not quite sure of what I've said? Anybody like an explanation? Nick. So yes, yeah, it's one of your boats, isn't it, Nick? Can I change the setting? Okay. Sorry. Yes. So Nick was asking. The question was, did that mean I would say go down on the shrouds? And for today, I would say for most of you, the answer is yes. And I'll now try and demonstrate. So I might need an assistant for this. Who'd like to come and volunteer and pull on the main halyard for me so I can move the shrouds down? Oh, come on, don't be shy. Great, okay, thank you. So before we start, just so you know, with this shroud position and about 10 on the gauge, the mast is just pressing against the front of the gate. So I'm going to come down to start with one hole. And what I'm trying to achieve is my maximum rake setting. So when I've got 10 on here, I've got the mast pressed against the front, pressed against the back of the mast gate. I just want you to see how many holes you've got to move it to do that. So that's one. Let's do the other side, shall we? Oh, he's done a good job of taping this one up. No, can't touch that. Oh, perfect. Thanks, Nick. This is where I slice through the wire for the microphone, and it all goes quiet. Okay. Right, so we've gone down one pin. Let's see what we've got. 10 or 11. That's actually moved it all the way back on this boat. Some of the boats, you'll be able to come back 2 pins. And actually, if you're really light, you might want to come all the way down as far as you can go. That's pretty straight. Can we just try the second one, if we can manage it? Don't think it'll go. No, it won't go any further. So, oh God, thanks, John. Chip handles are still on. Let's try this side. Yeah, it will. Okay. And can we try the other one? It's still on the first one. I couldn't move it. Yeah, that's in. Okay. It's probably already about 10. Not far off it. Okay, so, yeah. So you could see the amount of effort that was required to do that, really pulling down on the shrouds. The mast is now pretty straight all the way up. It's pressed quite hard against the back of the mast gate. But for lighter sailors, I think that will give you an advantage in what looks like some quite windy weather for the next couple of days. Now, I'll be here for another few minutes. Feel free to come up and look at this boat and ask me any questions if you're not comfortable asking in front of the whole group. But before we do that, has anybody got any more questions they'd like to share with everybody? How much is on here? How many on which hole? I went down two holes from what I would call a neutral upright position. Okay? Is that all right? Okay, so that's it for me.